And there we go. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I was slow. That video and 30 seconds is very short, apparently. Welcome everybody who has joined the feed. If you have just joined us, please do share your location in the chat. We would love to see who's joining us. Looks like we've already got folks from Philip Adu. Good morning. Paul Griffith is with us. Magdalena's from Poland has joined us. Hello, Magda. Partha, a LinkedIn user, has joined us from Seattle. That's very mysterious. And Rupak has joined us as well. Good day, everybody who has been able to join. And please do share, like I said, your locations and your questions as they occur to you, because we are very excited to take your questions, and it'll make this discussion more dynamic. So let's get on with the show. We are here to discuss data, but not just any data. The title of the show suggests we're talking about extracting maximum value from unstructured data. Unstructured data, maximum value. I am the one who's talking at the moment. My name is Ian Barkin. I am an entrepreneur. I've put courses out and books and other stuff about intelligent automation and the future of work. And I'm thrilled to be joined by two absolute experts on data in general, unstructured data specifically. Brad Cordova, who's the CEO, founder of super.AI, and Manish Rai, who's the VP of marketing of super.AI. And before we go on any further, I'll ask you guys to give a brief introduction of yourselves. So Manish, let's start with you. Who are you, sir? And welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, Ian. Good to be on this show with you again. I remember a few years ago when I was at Automation Anywhere, we took a plane ride together, I believe, to one of the events. Was it Orlando or somewhere?
It's always Orlando, Manish.
We got to know each other over there, and it's been quite a journey. So myself, I'm Manish Rai. I'm VP of Marketing at super.AI. I've been in Silicon Valley for close to 20 years, and squarely in the automation arena last 5 years, living the unstructured data journey at Automation Anywhere. I was the VP of Product Marketing and got to launch the IDP product, IQBot, and worked with my colleagues to help create that category. I spent a year at Appy, and I'm super excited, and no pun intended, to be here at super.AI, partnering with Brad to solve not just documents, but the challenge of processing any kind of unstructured data, which ends up being, from all measures, more than 80% of the data in any given enterprise.
Outstanding, thank you. And best for last, Brad, welcome. and who are you, sir?
Hey everyone, it's nice to be here. So I am Brad, the CEO, founder of super.AI. My quick background is I was doing my PhD at MIT, trying to merge symbolic AI and machine learning together. During my PhD, I founded a company called TrueMotion. We built the AI backend for a lot of the biggest mobility insurance companies around the world. As a part of that, we built one of the first at-scale AI infrastructures, which could collect data, clean data, label data, structure data. And a lot of people asked us, hey, could we use this AI platform? Unfortunately, the answer was no at the time, but that essentially was the genesis of super.AI, to solve a broad range of unstructured data problems using AI. And excited to be here and talking about unstructured data processing.
Outstanding. It is very cool. Hold on. Let's bring us all back. Hello, everybody. First of all, I've got to love the MIT reference, and love the idea that you'd solved the problem for yourself. Everyone else saw was valuable and wanted it. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, what better market validation? And Manish, man, when you said living the data life, I was pretty certain you were going to say living La Vida Loca. I wish you had done that, because that would have been funny. So yes, Manish, you shared it. We did share flights. We shared an Uber as well. Just to really confirm for everybody how close you and I are. But what we then did share more recently, which is where I got the chance to meet Brad, was we were all in New Orleans at the Intelligent Automation Winter Congress, which sounds sort of dark and ominous for some reason, but it was winter in New Orleans, so it was actually nice out. And I went there because I was just listening. I just wanted to see where the state of the market was, what the topics that that people were discussing were, whether it had evolved from RPA to broader intelligent automation, whether folks were focusing on citizen development more. And one thing that was clear, absolutely clear, was data was on everyone's lips. Everyone was trying to figure out how best to leverage the asset that they have, or tap into assets that they sort of knew were in there somewhere, but they just had struggled to get to. So let's start with data here, which is, I mean, data obviously is somewhat clear to folks, but this concept of unstructured data was really the turning point of where everyone was trying to figure out how to get value from that. Unstructured data, it's the topic of this discussion. Perhaps, Brad, could you define for us and our listeners what you think of when you say unstructured data?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd like to start by saying what unstructured data is not. So what unstructured data is not is structured data. And I think we all know what structured data is. I think the simplest way to think about it is structured data is data that you can fit into your Excel spreadsheet or your Google spreadsheet. It has rows and columns. Machines can understand this. You can use RPA on it, macros, software on this. So what is unstructured data? So unstructured data is data that's unstructured, obviously. And so these are things like images, audio, video, unstructured document, text, satellite data. And one of the hallmark properties of unstructured data is that it's useless, it's unusable. We call it unusable data until you provide structure for it. So if you have an image, you take it for granted because your brain, when the image hits your retina, it goes through a lot of processing before it gets structured in your brain. Or when you hear a sound, it goes through your cochlea and essentially becomes structured. So even in our bodies, we have to structure unstructured data. And so one of the most important things is that if you want to use unstructured data, it's so valuable, but you need to structure it first. And this is the whole idea behind unstructured data processing. And then I think the second most interesting thing before I pass to Manish is, if you look at the data, the amount of unstructured data looks like a classic exponential curve because everyone's taking pictures on their phone, videos on their phone, so many IoT devices. And the amount of structured data looks like a flat line when you plot it on the same graph. And so I think this was something interesting that I didn't maybe intuitively realize, but when I saw the data, it really blew my mind.
Outstanding. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Enterprises have it all over the place, but can't tap it. So it's as good as salt water. And that's, it's that analogy.
Great analogy. So people need more desalination plants to make the water usable.
There we go. That's an entire marketing angle you should experiment with, Manish. It's desalinating the world's data.
Yes.
Manish, I mean, Brad mentioned everything to the cochlea and brain function. Do you have anything to top that?
No, I was just amazed with the analogies and examples he brings up in relating to that. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Brad has almost like a photographic memory. And a good example is like his wife is German, and he took it upon himself to learn German, and it took him only 6 months to start speaking fluent German.
I don't know if it helps any of us to just be super jealous of one of the speakers on this call. I don't need to resent Brad.
Processor for unstructured data is like a little more advanced than mine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I resent Brad. Thanks so much for that. Okay. Damn it. I have to write shit down in little pieces of paper in my pocket, and I forget where they are. Okay, so data, everyone's talking about data. Unstructured data is this massive resource that in some cases is very hard to tap. So what we thought we would do was ask our collective communities through the use of LinkedIn polls, because everyone loves a LinkedIn poll. And we thought we'd ask folks what state they thought enterprises were in using or accessing or even just being aware of this data. And so what we did, and watch, I bring graphics, but I'm just going to slap on top of our faces. But so what we did in a LinkedIn poll is we asked our companies, people think, and we sort of specifically chose our companies rather than is your company, because we sort of wanted people to speak more broadly to the world that they were privy to. But our company is able to extract data from, or value from their unstructured data. And before we show you the results, I'll show you the options that we gave folks. And then I want to chat amongst ourselves about where we think, where our gut says the answer should be. So the options we gave were sort of the classic yes, sort of no, of yes, the oil's flowing. We made a data is oil analogy. So yes, the oil is flowing. Enterprises can tap into this unstructured stuff and glean value from it. Then there was the sort of, it's somewhat tapped, but it's at this point unusable. There's the more definitive, no, we can't find this stuff or we can't use it. And then there's the option of, I'm not quite clear what you're saying, and I could benefit from some clarity. So I'll leave that up for a second. Manish, where did you think the votes were going to come in? What was going to be the winner in your head?
In my mind, sort of was going to be a winner, but I thought yes would have been less than 20%, frankly, more around 15% or so.
Gotcha. Brad?
So if I'm honest, I had no idea, just because it's asking for kind of a subjective value assessment. If it was, right, hey, do you have AI models that give at least 30% ROI, then I'd have a very clear answer. But if you asked, are you fast? Maybe some three, or my son would say he's the fastest person in the world, whereas on an objective scale, Usain Bolt is much faster. So I honestly didn't know.
That is a very data-oriented answer. So no, I mean, and I guess my gut was, and I'm sort of steal some of the punchline here, but our community is one that's in this fishbowl and hears about this stuff a lot. So generally, they'll vote more optimistically than I think the state of the world actually is. So put it back to our faces for a sec. So I think more people think they've got their act together, and in fact, most enterprises don't have a clue or don't have a hope of tapping into this stuff quite yet. So drum roll, please. The responses came in, and the answer was a sort of a resounding sort of. 50% of folks thought that they'd sort of gotten their handle on this unstructured data. They'd, in some cases, they tapped it, but they were having trouble using it. And then a frankly shockingly large percent, 38, said that, yeah, this stuff's flowing. Like we got our game together. We're tapping into the unstructured and we're getting value from it. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Manish?
No, I was truly shocked because a survey from SSON, from the community we talked to, came out, and when you look at the data, like how many companies have more than 20 bots, what percentage of respondents, and it was less than 19%.
Right.
And similarly, about 18% responded that they've moved beyond and they're looking at digitizing data and looking at document processing. So about 9% each, around 18%. So I was hoping to see a number in that range. So I was really shocked to see such a high number.
Well, and I guess, and nobody's going to weigh in and say, I have no idea what I'm talking about or what you're talking about. So the 2-3% of unstruck of the I guess wasn't necessarily surprising to me. But again, I do think it's optimistic.
Yes.
Now that said,
we came back from SSON week, the annual gathering of all the automators in the world, and frankly, customer prospect after prospect, they were talking to us about documents because they just very early on in processing documents are struggling still.
Right.
So that also prompted us to think that they didn't look like customers who had the oil or the data flowing smoothly.
I think the technical term is had their shit together. But yeah. So they were not that. So okay, so let's pivot. We're halfway through our time. I want to start picking your incredible brains as to what good looks like and how one gets to good. So let's just assume, for the sake of discussion, that 38% really do, in fact, have their act together, and that they really are tapped into this. What are the hallmarks of that sort of enterprise? What is that enterprise doing right to really be tapping into this unstructured data, converting it into value, and using it? And Manish, I'll start with you.
Yeah, in my mind, I think if I look at the automation journey of most enterprises, they're starting with structured data. So they have to have a fairly mature RPA in place, and they have sufficient number of processes automated so that they're ready to move on to the next phase and start tackling the unstructured part, the 80% of the remaining. So that's one hallmark. They have somewhat of a RPA maturity. And two, they are driven by ROI. So they're looking at, hey, what are the types of unstructured data that are causing bottlenecks, or they are heavy burden to the enterprise. And in my experience, the number one thing that comes up for a lot of enterprises are business documents. And then moving beyond that, people start looking at email-centric workflow. People are also looking at conversational AI, chatbots, and understanding that for customer-facing websites. And once you move beyond that, you start looking at some of the processes that involve images. So we are seeing customers who have visual inspection type use cases in the manufacturing plants, in their supply chains, where they could be processing those images automatically to do that. And finally, they move into other types of data like audio and video beyond that. So that seems to be the logical progression in my mind.
Outstanding. Okay, and so Brad, it's from your experience of having used tools that solve this problem for yourself. So being a company that was the archetype of good that everyone else wanted to tap into the special sauce, and now having a company that does help people. When you walk into an early prospect and you're describing your philosophy in the world, what's a telltale sign that they get it, like that organization really does have their act together, that they are making the right investments or steps? What is a sign of good to you?
Yeah, so there's three things concretely that I see are the biggest variables of the winners and separate the losers in this space, or the soon to be winners, but not quite yet. And the first one, Manish touched on this, is the companies that treat AI or automation more as like a science experiment where you create a cool demo and then you write on your website we're an AI company. That just doesn't work in today's world anymore. The businesses who are successful automating with AI, they don't just think about quality, but they think about the trade-off between quality, cost, and speed. And they take these AI models and make AI business applications. And today's successful companies expect an ROI from AI. It's out of the world of this is a cool science experiment, this is a cool demo, and really giving this enterprise quality guarantee, cost guarantee, and speed guarantee. That's really important. The second thing is using a centralized unified AI platform where this platform can harness any worker. So I think the dirty little secret of AI is that a lot of what makes AI successful is having humans in the loop, whether the humans are labeling the data to teach the AI, whether the humans are quality checking the AI. And so a platform that can, let's say, use the best AI, let's say if it's Google or your internal model or Amazon, but also having in that same loop humans and treating it as a feature, not a bug, and integrating that also with some kind of software, let's say like RPA, and you're always using the best, and you're always routing to the appropriate worker. That's important. And then the second part of this unified AI platform is that you have all your applications in one place. So we all have iPhones now, or Android phones, and all your applications are on one phone. Before, you'd have to buy this thing to do X, that thing to do Y, this to do Z, but now all your applications are in one place. This is really important to take this iPhone App Store idea seriously in AI. And then the final is what I call automatic automation. So you may have some workers be able to automate in a certain degree, have a certain quality, cost, and speed, but you really want this to automatically improve over time. And so this isn't just improving the quality, but improving the quality, cost, and speed automatically while you sleep as you process more data. And then the final piece is not adopting a new platform and throwing everything away that you've invested in previously, like your RPA solutions, your BPO solutions. You want this to all integrate together. So when you're cleaning data, labeling, structuring, training models, monitoring, you don't want to throw away what you have or make a totally new investment. You want all these things to work together. And so the companies I see that are successful do these things.
Outstanding. I have to say, from my this in my day, I'm about to use old as a useful thing here. But having been in the BPO industry as long as I have, having been in the RPA industry, that's a really insightful and respectful comment you just made, as far as don't throw away that which you have, build upon it, and add value by integrating it. So I appreciate hearing that. So those are hallmarks of an enterprise that does things right. I think we all believe that most enterprises are still struggling in many cases because they've just been working their way through this sort of digital, just sort of maturity curve, where they've played with many of the tools you mentioned, with the RPA and other intelligent automation things. They're starting to address documents as a source of unstructured data. Let's spend the last sort of 10 minutes doing two things. One, if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat and we will absolutely answer them. Please do that. And I'll say your name again if you want to hear it online, and we'll ask the question. But more so, I'd like to hear, Manish and Brad, your perspective on how you help enterprises that aren't the hallmark of mature and good yet. Like, how does Super AI work with your clients to give them that insight, to help them understand that cost, quality, and speed triptych, and how they invest appropriately, how they educate internally, and how they structure their strategy going forward.
If I can,
go for it.
Take a first stab at it.
Yeah.
We have a lot of companies coming to us who have been disillusioned with the IDP or intelligent documents processing solution they have deployed. So if you look at it, Ian, you and I have been living this space for 5 years, and what so-called modern IDP solutions started emerging 5 years ago. But what we are learning is most of those solutions have put a new interface on the same old engine, which is the OCR, and made it more accessible and usable for the business users. But they haven't fundamentally rebuilt the engine underlying to process documents with greater accuracy. And so what they love about us is that, hey, we have an open platform that can pick the best model, because ultimately we don't care about building our own models, but picking what's the best to deliver ROI to the customer. Second thing is, a lot of those solutions don't have all the capabilities for managing the human part of processing documents very well. They leave it up to the enterprise. And what they love is we have built a whole resource management engine which treats AI and human workers very similarly and routes the job to the best worker out there. And we have tools, but humans need motivation. They need some oversight. They need gamification. They need vacations, and they leave on breaks. So we've built all these capabilities where we randomize the output, so we can find people who are just clicking on the first option all the time. We ask them if they're still there. We gamify to keep them engaged, and we can also crowdsource and measure the quality of the input of the users. And then that allows us to route to the best human or AI to actually deliver ROI, because ultimately the customer doesn't care what you're using underneath. All they care about is, this is the metric, this is the outcome we want, and can you deliver to that in the best cost possible for it. So for a given task, maybe humans outperform AI, and we leverage them. For another task, AI far outperforms humans, so we leverage AI. So that's something very unique. And finally, the point Brad mentioned is guaranteeing quality, and we haven't seen anybody else step up and say that, hey, we stand behind, and we have all the mechanisms where we combine the output of AI input and the humans and measure the quality of each worker to actually guarantee that output quality to you.
Outstanding. Brad, what do you have to add?
So I spend a lot of my time trying to make AI unsexy. And what do I mean by that? There's so much hype and so much false marketing in the AI space. It kind of sickens me. And you have these two personas. You have one that persona that has been burned by solutions they've tried, and there's like, oh, it doesn't work. Or you have someone who believes it, and it's like AI can do everything. It can read my mind. It can solve cancer, and so I spend a lot of time just trying to educate what's real and not. And at the end of the day, all I care about and all I want is for our customers to be successful. And it's rarely that this super sexy, brand new trillion parameter model is the way to go. It's oftentimes a linear model or just a workhorse model coupled with the humans, but giving guarantees. And then there's a lot of great technology, in our case, behind the scenes, where you have a router and a combiner and use reinforcement learning. But at the end of the day, I don't really care about any of that. I just care about delivering results. And so we spend a lot of time making sure people really understand what AI can and can't do, choosing the right project, and making sure they get an ROI in terms of quality, cost, and speed. Because in the end, that's all that matters. And that's where AI becomes ubiquitous and changes the world, when we make it practical. It's not the cool, flashy demo. It's on the, let's say, unsexy problem that humans are working on, and humans shouldn't work on a lot of these problems. We want humans to be more human and automate a lot of this stuff. So a lot of time is spent in the practical nature with our clients, either trying to, like, we like to show rather than tell. So we just say, just use our product and you make your own decision. I don't like all this marketing, and it's not good for anybody long term.
Manish, as a former chief marketing officer and as you're a VP of marketing, what do we say? How do we feel about that? No, I do absolutely totally agree. I again, as I said earlier, I respect and am impressed by your pragmatism towards the market. What used to drive me crazy in the RPA days is when I would go to a prospective enterprise, not a client, but someone we were trying to win over, and they would pose a question, and many of them did at one point, and it was worded almost exactly the same every time. And they would ask, why do I need RPA if I can just use AI? And it just, I mean, it was exactly what you described. It was an sort of founded faith in a concept that it could do magic. And so they didn't understand that technology is in fact hard. Some of the more traditional technology is exactly what's the right sort of solution for the problem that they're facing. RPA is one of a number of tools in a tool set. And so it was that belief in magic and a fascination with shiny things that I think has constrained true digital transformation for way too long. So I love your approach and your emphasis on sort of the right worker for the right task, whether that worker be a person or an algorithm or a combination. Outstanding. We're at the end of our time. I'm gonna
questions.
There are some comments here.
Oh,
I think we should address them.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was blathering and missed. Which one do we want to put up? What do you like?
I think the first and third are very similar. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Manish.
Go ahead, Brad. You want to take the first part?
We're talking about this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the the first and third are asking very similar questions, but I'll just read the question. So I think you're saying, okay, when you talk about the advantages of a centralized platform, what do you look for in a platform? What does it make sense to go with something already integrated with your ERP? So I think the first thing when you're looking at a centralized platform is you want it to be flexible. So you want this application layer where you can plug in a certain machine learning model, let's say from Google or Amazon or an open source, or if you have a great machine learning team, plug that in, because we view machine learning models as commoditized, and there's so much innovation in the space. Whatever machine learning model you choose today, there's going to be a better one next month. And so any approach you choose shouldn't be locked into a specific vendor or specific machine learning model, or else you're going to get outdated so quickly. And I can't stress that enough. The same thing is true. It should be able to suck in AI models. It should be able to suck in any human, whether that's internal to your organization or a BPO or somebody in South America or India or Asia. And then it should also integrate to your RPA or ERP solutions. In terms of your second question, does it make sense to go with something already integrated with your ERP? So I would say if it has these elements I just mentioned, then it does make sense. If it doesn't, then it doesn't make sense. And the other thing is you want something that has enough QA to guarantee the quality. So machine learning is powerful, and I think this is kind of the point of Thomas Pointer. I don't know if that was a pun, but if it doesn't give guarantees around quality, cost, and speed and clear business ROIs, then I would also consider trying something else. And then the last question, which is very similar: what are the best software tools for AI companies, and what are the challenges currently needed to overcome and help to capture quality of unstructured data? So it's hard to answer this in general, because I would need to know where you're at in your journey. Let's say you have a team of expert PhDs in machine learning. I would say just directly use Google, Amazon, Microsoft, or some open source, because your team will figure that out. But for most people who don't have an army of data scientists or machine learning engineers, then I think using Google's tools directly or using machine learning directly is a really bad approach, because machine learning is powerful, but it's a really pain in the ass to use. It's like the high interest credit card of technical debt. And what I would recommend is to use an application layer where then you can plug in these great machine learning models to get the power of them, but then you get the governance, you get the guarantees, you get the management, you get the integrations, everything that you need if you're not an expert in this.
Yeah. And I can take the question directed at me. It's a hard question, but I would like to address the elephant in the room. Thomas, I don't know which part you disagreed with my outlook, because what I said was the first generation IDP solutions were not very flexible. And I think that's exactly what you're saying over here, that you found that some of the approaches were not flexible. They had a fixed set of OCRs they're using. There's a black box of AI models inside, and you don't have visibility, and then you don't have a quality guaranteed associated with it. And I couldn't agree with you more on that point, that yes, those solutions were not flexible. And our approach here, and thankfully, a lot of companies in the market, they were not an AI first companies. They were an RPA or some other business, and they put out an AI solution, and they lacked a lot of deep AI expertise. While the difference with Super AI is that we are foundation, our engineering team comes from people from Google Brain team, from the original founders in the Microsoft. Brad himself is a ML PhD dropout from MIT. And so we have solid engineers who understand all the challenges and how to overcome, right, where you could have overfitted model, or you could have loss by overtraining it and things like that, whatever can go wrong. And we have taken steps to make sure that we maintain the quality and improve the quality over time continuously, and do the active learning in the right way possible. without relying too much on the outliers and having them kind of affect our underlying models and impact results.
And I'd like to address this because I agree 100% with Thomas, and this is what I've been saying for years and years, that if you only use machine learning model, you're going to have horrible approaches. Unless you're a total expert in this, but then even then, they don't use just machine learning. They know how to wield this to work. But this is exactly why we built Super AI, because if you just try to use the Google model, you're going to have these problems that you have. And I think more people need to speak out about this, like Thomas, and you need to use humans in the loop. I think there's this weird ethos that using humans is somehow a bad thing. It's our human brains are one of the most wonderful things in the universe. And there's a lot of fraud going on where it's like we're AI only, and then behind the scenes we all figure out that they're just using humans. And it's important to not just use machine learning. And I think that's why people got so many bad results in the past. And so I think it's an important point, and I agree. And that's why we personally, we built this even at TrueMotion, we built this application layer on top of machine learning, because machine learning only approaches, or even machine learning first approaches, if you're not the expert in this, it's not going to work for you. I can promise that.
Outstanding. Well, thank you everybody for questions. Thomas, for your spicy one too. That was great. Well, we're over time. I want to all wrap up and say thank you, Brad. Thank you, Manish, for doing this with me. It was fun to do the poll, to hear from so many people what they thought about the relative and general maturity of the enterprise space as far as its understanding of active sort of strategic initiatives around and success with tapping into unstructured data and converting it into value. Fascinating, just because there is such an excitement around all things digital and digital transformation in general. We all touched on our histories and our heritages that are informed by various different elements of that, from RPA and intelligent automation to machine learning. So it's an exciting space out there. I love Brad's wrap up of the human brain is amazing. I've got one. I think it's okay sometimes, and I do agree that sort of human in the loop orchestration of work with using the right tools for the right jobs and really unleashing humans to be as creative and empathetic and as human as we are is the winning algorithm, the winning calculation. So unless
in fact, yeah. I'll do a small plug-in on May 4th. Brad and I will be talking with my old colleague from Automation Anywhere, Rob Hughes, who's with Techopian, on May 4th, and we'll be actually tackling human-centric automation as a topic.
Very cool.
So stay tuned.
Great. And so if you were on this broadcast and you think it's useful, do share it. The link is available on LinkedIn, so easy enough to share with your friends and colleagues and other people who I know will benefit from the insights that Brad and Manish shared. Brad, any last words before we close the broadcast?
No, it's great to have these conversations, and appreciate it.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Thursday.
Thanks, Ian. It's always a pleasure to be hosting an event with you.
It's fun, right?
Cheers.
Yes.
I'll see you at the next Uber in Orlando.
All right.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.